The night Evan Ward brought the box home, the city felt strangely quiet, as if the world itself was holding its breath. He walked through the narrow hallway of his apartment building with tired steps, the dim lights flickering above him like nervous eyes watching every move. His hands gripped the package tightly, feeling the unexpected warmth pulsing through the metal shell. And with every second that passed, he felt more certain that this was no ordinary smart pet. Evan had bought it from a hidden tech stall deep inside the old night market, a place where illegal machines hummed in the shadows and strange vendors whispered secrets for the right price. He only wanted something small to keep him company, something simple, something that didn't ask questions or break his already complicated life. But the moment the vendor pushed the box toward him with shaking fingers and eyes full of fear, Evan sensed that he was walking into something far bigger than a lonely man's wish. Inside his apartment, he placed the box on the table and stood over it. Listening, there was breathing inside, soft and fragile, as if a sleeping creature fought to stay alive. The metal casing was covered in symbols he didn't recognize, glowing faintly like dying stars trapped under the surface. Evan swallowed hard, his heart beating faster. Something alive was in there, and everything in him said to leave it closed. Return it, forget this night ever happened, but something else, something deeper, whispered that the box had found its way to him for a reason. He unlatched the steel clips, each one releasing a cold metallic click that echoed through the room like a warning. When the lid finally opened, a soft wave of warm air rose up, carrying the scent of rain and metal and something unearthly. Evan blinked as his eyes adjusted to the faint glow inside. A small figure lay curled within, wrapped in thin metallic bands that looked more like restraints than protection. It was a girl, small, fragile, and not human. Her skin held pale blue tones with veins of faint shimmering light that pulsed gently, as if her body held a star that was fading away. Her hair drifted upward slightly, floating as though gravity did not fully apply to her. Evan stared, breathless, unable to move or think or believe what he was seeing. The girl stirred, a tiny sound escaping her dry lips. Her eyelids fluttered, revealing eyes that glowed softly with swirling, shifting colors. She looked at him with fear, confusion, and exhaustion, her chest rising and falling in strained breaths. She whispered something in a language that vibrated like music and static combined. Then her body weakened and she slipped back into unconsciousness. Evan sat down slowly, running a trembling hand through his hair. Everything he knew, every rule of his world, shattered in that moment. Someone had packed a living alien child into a box meant for a robotic pet. Someone had smuggled her, hidden her, and sold her like a gadget. And now she was in his home, in his care, breathing because he opened the box instead of throwing it away. For several minutes he simply watched her, noticing how her glowing veins dimmed with each passing breath, as if her life was slipping away. He moved closer, kneeling beside her, gently touching the metal bands around her arms and legs. They were tight, digging into her soft skin, and he felt anger rising in him. Anger at whoever had done this. Anger at the cruelty. Anger at the idea of a child treated like cargo. Carefully, he removed the first band. It fell away with a soft metallic chime, and the light in her veins brightened slightly. Encouraged, he removed another, then another, until she lay free and breathing a little easier. Her small fingers twitched as if trying to reach for something familiar, something safe. Evan whispered softly, almost without thinking, "You're safe now. I promise." His voice surprised him because he wasn't sure he could keep that promise. Not when he had no idea what she was, who she belonged to, or who might come looking for her. He carried her gently to the couch, wrapping her in a soft blanket, feeling the strange warmth of her skin through the fabric. She was so light, almost weightless, as if made of something softer than flesh, something delicate and cosmic. Her breathing steadied but remained weak, like a flame fighting to stay alive in a storm. Outside, distant sirens echoed across the city, and Evan felt a sudden chill. He knew deep inside that the world was already searching for her, that whatever force had hunted her before would not stop now. His simple life had ended the moment he opened that box. But as he looked at the sleeping alien girl, peaceful for the first time since he found her, Evan felt something stronger than fear. He felt responsibility, a pull in his chest he could not ignore. She was alone, terrified, and dying when he found her. And now she had no one except him. He sat beside her the entire night, watching the glow in her skin rise and fall with her breath, listening to the strange warmth of her presence fill the room. And as dawn began to break, Evan realized something that made his heart beat faster. He had not adopted a smart pet. He had brought home a life that would change everything. And the world, somewhere out there, was already moving toward them, one silent step at a time. Evan woke to the soft sound of breathing, slow and uneven, like a small wave struggling to reach the shore. When he lifted his head from the couch, he saw the alien girl curled under the blanket, the faint glow in her veins pulsing like tiny stars trapped beneath her skin. For a moment he simply watched her, trying to understand how something so fragile could carry an energy that felt older than anything he had ever known. Morning light slipped through the window and touched her hair, making each strand shimmer as if the sun itself had woven gold into it. Her eyes opened slowly, glowing with soft, swirling colors that shifted with her fear and confusion. She looked at Evan with a mix of caution and desperate hope, as if she was trying to understand if he was real or just another danger waiting to hurt her. She whispered something again, the same gentle musical vibration he had heard before, but this time there was a question in her tone, a small trembling sound like she was asking if she was safe. Evan knelt beside her, moving slowly so he wouldn't frighten her, and placed a glass of water next to her hand. She stared at it with wide eyes, unsure, then touched it carefully, her fingers trembling as if she expected it to vanish. He spoke softly. "You're okay. You're safe here." His voice was calm, even though his heart raced because he knew nothing about her world, her powers, or the threats chasing her. She blinked at him and repeated the word safe. Her voice cracked and thin, as if she was trying to learn it. For the next hour, she watched him with childlike curiosity, studying every movement, every sound, every shift of emotion on his face. Slowly, she began to mimic human gestures, touching the blanket, feeling the table surface, observing the sunlight on her hands. Then she pointed at herself and said a single word with certainty. "Lyra." Evan felt something warm in his chest, a simple connection forming between their two worlds. "Lyra," he repeated gently, and she nodded with a soft hum, then pointed at him. He placed his hand on his chest and said, "Evan?" She whispered his name like a secret, her voice barely touching the air. Lyra tried to stand, but her legs shook. Evan reached out to steady her, and she froze for a second, staring at his hand as if trying to read his intentions. Then she slowly allowed him to help, leaning on him with a trust she had not shown before. Her skin felt warm, too warm for a human child, and when she touched his wrist by accident, he felt a small spark, like static mixed with a heartbeat. As she gained strength, the air around her grew warmer, and the glow in her veins brightened. Evan realized she wasn't just recovering, she was awakening. Her eyes moved restlessly around the room, sensing things he couldn't see, hearing things his ears couldn't catch. Her breath quickened as she pressed her palm against the wall, whispering in her strange language with a distressed tone. "Lyra," he murmured, trying to calm her. But she shook her head, her glowing eyes widening with fear. She grabbed his hand with sudden urgency and placed it on her chest, right over the pulsing light beneath her skin. Evan froze as images flashed behind his eyes. Not clear pictures, but emotions and echoes and running, hiding, screaming. Metal ships burning through the sky, a planet covered in silver towers collapsing under fire, voices shouting her name in warning and in love. Evan stumbled back, breathless, his heart racing as if he had lived her memories for a moment. Lyra collapsed into his arms, trembling, her small fingers gripping his shirt tightly as if anchoring herself to him. She whispered the same word again and again, the only one she seemed able to form fully in English yet. "Hunt!" He understood then that she wasn't just lost, she was being chased. Someone or something was searching for her with relentless force, and the thought made the room grow colder even under the warm sunlight. Lyra slowly calmed, her breathing returning to a soft rhythm, and she rested her head against his shoulder, as if she finally allowed herself to feel safe with him. He made her warm soup, guiding her small hands through the motions of eating, and with each moment she grew more connected to him, watching him with gentle trust that felt heavy to carry. She touched objects around the apartment, learning them, memorizing them, and sometimes she placed her palm on Evan's hand as if comparing human warmth to her own glowing energy. Hours passed, but every time the building creaked or a car honked outside, Lyra flinched, eyes glowing brighter, glowing like a warning signal from another world. Evan noticed how she always positioned herself near him, never too far, as if she knew he was her only shelter in a place she did not understand. When night fell, Lyra suddenly turned toward the window, her glowing eyes narrowing in fear. The lights in the room flickered, the temperature dropped, and she whispered his name with shaking breath. Evan stepped beside her and looked out at the dark street. Unable to see what she sensed, but he felt it. A heavy pressure in the air. Something closing in from far away. Lyra clung to his arm, whispering one more word he didn't need translated. A word filled with fear, warning, and truth. They. And in that quiet moment, Evan understood that the world outside was no longer the same, and whatever was coming for her was already moving closer, step by step, guided by a force she could feel in her bones. And now he was part of it too, forever tied to the alien child who trusted him more than anyone in the universe. The night seemed thicker than usual, as if the darkness outside Evan's window had weight, pressing against the glass with a silent warning. Lyra stood beside him with her small glowing fingers wrapped around his wrist, her trembling breath brushing against his arm like cold mist. She stared at the empty street below with wide, frightened eyes, and the faint light in her veins flickered with every heartbeat. Evan followed her gaze but saw nothing except streetlights and shadows stretching across the cracked pavement. Yet he felt something too, a strange pressure in the air, a heaviness that made his skin tighten and his instincts scream that this was the beginning of something he could not see, but could feel in every corner of his mind. Lyra whispered again, her voice soft but sharp with fear. They, the single word carried pain, memory, and a warning that echoed far deeper than sound. Evan placed his hand gently on her shoulder, feeling her pulse quicken under his touch. It's okay, he whispered, even though he knew it might not be okay, not anymore. You're safe with me, but safety felt like a fragile promise when the air itself seemed to shiver around them. Lyra pulled away from the window with sudden urgency, moving through the apartment as if searching for something familiar enough to calm her. Her glowing eyes darted across every corner, tracking echoes only she could hear. Evan watched her closely, trying to understand the invisible danger that had shaken her so deeply. He knelt beside her as she pressed her palm against the wall again, her fingers tracing the vibrations through the bricks. Her skin glowed brighter, casting soft blue light across the dark room, and Evan realized she wasn't just scared. She was sensing something moving toward them, something not human, something with purpose. A soft electrical hum buzzed through the room, barely noticeable at first, then growing stronger, the lights flickering as if responding to an unseen presence. Lyra's breath hitched, her hands shaking as she whispered in her alien language, her voice trembling like a child begging the wind to stop. Evan gently held her shoulders, grounding her as best he could. Lyra, look at me, he said softly, and when her frightened eyes lifted to meet his, he continued, Tell me what's coming. She struggled to find the words, her voice breaking as she pushed her fear through English sounds. Hunters. Evan felt the word sink into him, heavy and cold. Hunters meant intelligence, meant pursuit, meant danger that had crossed stars to reach her. He didn't know who they were or how they were tracking her, but he knew they were close enough for her to feel them through walls and air and silence. Before he could speak again, a faint metallic tapping echoed from somewhere outside, a sound too precise to be random, like metal fingertips brushing against the building's exterior. Lyra flinched so hard she stumbled back, nearly falling if Evan hadn't caught her in time. The tapping grew louder, moving along the walls like someone was scanning the structure inch by inch, searching for life, searching for energy, searching for her. Evan lifted Lyra in his arms without thinking and moved away from the windows, his heart pounding as the lights flickered again, casting sharp shadows across the floor. He pressed his back against the hallway wall, breathing slowly, holding Lyra close as she clung to him with desperate, trembling fingers. Her body felt warm, too warm, as if her fear was causing something inside her to burn brighter. The patterns on her skin pulsed like warning signals, shifting in color and intensity with every breath she took. Suddenly, a thin beam of red light swept across the window. Scanning the room with silent precision, Evan froze, lowering his head and shielding Lyra with his arms. The beam lingered for several seconds before drifting away. Disappearing into the darkness outside, Lyra pressed her forehead into Evan's chest, whispering one word over and over in a fragile, broken voice. Hide. 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 Evan held her tight and whispered back, I won't let them take you. She looked up at him with glowing, fearful eyes, searching his face, searching his promise, searching for something human enough to trust. Then she placed her small, glowing hand against his cheek, and in that moment a rush of memory surged through him again, not as sharp as before but strong enough to show him faces. Fire, screams, the cold metal of cages, the echo of alien boots on steel floors. Hunters were not soldiers, they were trackers, Ruthless and patient creatures bred for pursuit. They did not stop, they did not hesitate, and they did not fail. Evan swallowed hard. Knowing they couldn't stay in the apartment any longer, he grabbed a backpack, stuffed it with essentials, wrapped Lyra in a warm hoodie, and lifted her into his arms again. She clung to him without protest, her trust so complete it made his chest ache with protective fear. The hallway outside was dark and silent, but the air felt charged with tension, like the building itself knew something was closing in. Evan moved quietly, each step slow and controlled, hoping to slip through the shadows unnoticed. As he reached the stairwell, Lyra gasped and clutched at his shirt, glowing brighter as she whispered a trembling warning. Below, Evan's breath froze, footsteps echoed faintly from the lower floors. Too heavy to be human, too synchronized to be accidental. He held Lyra closer, heart pounding, mind racing, realizing they were no longer running from shadows. The hunters had arrived and they knew exactly where she was. Evan stood frozen at the top of the stairwell, holding Lyra tightly as the echo of heavy inhuman footsteps climbed from below. The sound was slow, steady, and deliberate, each step vibrating through the metal railings like a warning drum, announcing the arrival of something that did not belong on Earth. Lyra buried her face against his chest, her glowing skin trembling with fear, and Evan felt her heartbeat racing like a trapped bird trying to escape a cage. He knew they couldn't go down, not with those things hunting them floor by floor. He turned toward the dim hallway stretching behind him, knowing the fire escape on the other end was their only chance. Every step felt heavier than the last, not because of Lyra's weight, but because of the dread wrapping around him like cold smoke. Lyra kept whispering in her alien tongue, her voice shaking, her small fingers gripping his jacket with desperate strength. Evan didn't know the words, but he understood the emotion behind them. She was begging him to run, to hurry, to survive. He whispered back to calm her, even though fear pressed against his throat like a knife. "I'm here, Lyra. I'm not letting anyone take you." The hallway seemed endless, every shadow stretching like claws waiting to grab them. Lights flickered above them with a strange rhythm, almost like the building itself was reacting to the presence of the hunters. Evan reached the fire escape door and pushed it open, stepping into the cold night air. The metal staircase rattled under his feet and Lyra flinched, her glowing eyes darting around as if expecting something to leap from the darkness. Down below, the alley was drowned in shadows, the only light coming from a flickering street lamp barely holding on to life. Evan hurried down the steps, gripping the railing with one hand while holding Lyra securely with the other. Her breath warmed his neck. Shaky and fragile, but she didn't cry. She just held him as if he was the only thing keeping her from falling apart. Halfway down, Lyra suddenly stiffened and gasped. Lifting her head, her eyes widened with terror as she looked up. Evan followed her gaze and froze. At the rooftop edge above them, a tall figure stood silently, its silhouette sharp and unnatural, long limbs and metallic armor reflecting the faint moonlight. Its eyes glowed red like twin burning coals aimed straight at them. Evan felt a chill rush through him, colder than anything he had ever known. The hunter had found them. He grabbed the railing and descended faster, his boots clanging against the metal, the sound too loud in the silent night. The hunter leapt from the rooftop with terrifying grace, landing on the fire escape above them with a metallic crash that shook the entire structure. Lyra screamed softly, burying herself against him as the metal groaned under the creature's weight. Evan's heartbeat roared in his ears as he reached the bottom and dashed into the alley. The cold air burning his lungs, he didn't dare look back. But he could hear the clicks, the scraping, the soft, predatory hum of the hunter descending after them. He ran through narrow passages, turning corners blindly, trying to remember the shortcuts he used when he worked late shifts. Lyra clung to him with shaking hands, her glowing veins pulsing brighter with every moment of fear, illuminating his path like faint blue lanterns. Finally, he reached an abandoned storage building at the end of the block. Its broken windows staring like empty eyes, he pushed through the old door, the hinges screaming in protest, and slipped inside, closing it as quietly as possible. The building smelled of dust, metal, and forgotten years, shadows hanging thick in every corner. Evan leaned against the wall, breathless, holding Lyra close, trying to calm her trembling body. She lifted her head slowly, her eyes shimmering with sadness and fear, then pressed her hand against his chest again. This time the memory she shared was clearer, longer, almost like a story told through emotion instead of words. He saw flashes of her world, a silver sky cracked by thunder, cities shaped like spirals of light, her people running in fear as dark ships fell from the clouds like metallic sharks. He saw her hiding in a glowing chamber, while tall armored figures stormed through corridors. He felt her mother's hands, gentle but shaking, placing something bright inside Lyra's chest, whispering goodbye with tears in her eyes. When the vision faded, Lyra collapsed against him exhausted, her small body shaking from the weight of the memory. Evan held her tightly, his own chest aching from the pain he had felt through her. He stroked her hair gently, whispering, "I'm here. I promise I'm here." Lyra looked up at him with eyes filled with ancient sorrow, and for the first time she spoke a full sentence in English, her voice weak but clear enough to break him. "They want the star inside me." Evan stared at her, confused and horrified, the words echoing in his mind like a dark prophecy. Before he could ask anything, the metal door behind them rattled softly, not from the wind but from a careful, deliberate push. Lyra grabbed his hand with sudden fear, her glow brightening as she whispered one final trembling truth. Hunters find light, and in that single moment, Evan realized they were running from more than soldiers. They were running from a force that could sense her existence, her energy, her very heartbeat, a force that would never stop until it had her, or until he found a way to protect the girl who carried a star inside her chest, and a destiny far bigger than either of them understood. The metal door shuddered again, slow and deliberate, as if the thing outside was tasting the fear inside the abandoned building. Evan pulled Lyra behind a stack of old crates, his breath tight and shallow, her small, glowing fingers clinging to his jacket with desperate strength. Every nerve in his body felt stretched to the edge, but he kept one hand around her, steadying her trembling frame as the door rattled harder. He knew they couldn't outrun these creatures forever. He also knew that hiding in empty buildings and dark alleys was no longer enough. The hunters were tracking the light inside her, the star her mother placed in her chest, and with every moment of fear it glowed brighter, calling danger closer. Lyra pressed her forehead against his shoulder, whispering small broken sounds, her eyes flickering with blue and gold light. Evan wished he could tell her the world was safe, but a burning voice in his chest told him he had to stop running and find help before they were hunted into a corner with nowhere left to flee. The door began to bend inward, metal groaning like a wounded creature. The hunters were forcing their way inside. Evan lifted Lyra into his arms and ran deeper into the storage building, weaving through shadows and piles of junk. The crack of breaking steel echoed behind them, filling the air with a sharp scream of metal. He pushed through a broken side exit, stepping into a narrow alley just as the main door gave way with a deafening crash. Lyra gasped and clung to his neck, her glow pulsing faster. Evan sprinted across the alley, not caring about the pain stabbing his legs, not caring about the cold air ripping at his lungs. His only thought was to get her away, keep her hidden, keep her alive. As he reached the end of the alley, a sharp beam of light cut across his path. Blinding for a second, Evan shielded Lyra instinctively, expecting another hunter, expecting another nightmare. But the voice that shouted next was human, desperate, confused, and familiar. "Drop the weapon and step away." Evan blinked through the light and saw armed officers pointing rifles at him, their armored suits marked with Earth security insignias. The siren of a patrol vehicle echoed down the street, red and blue lights flashing across the cracked walls. Lyra trembled violently, burying her head into Evan's chest. Evan raised his free hand slowly, trying to keep his voice steady. "She's not a weapon. She's a child." The lead officer stepped closer, his eyes sharp with fear and confusion. "We've been tracking an alien energy surge all night," he said. "Protocol demands containment. Containment." The word hit Evan like a punch. He took a step back protectively, wrapping both arms around Lyra. The officers aimed their rifles higher, their fingers tightening near the triggers. From behind them, a metallic screech split the air, a sound that didn't belong to any Earth creature. The hunters had arrived. The officers turned in shock, their lights flashing across the towering armored figure stepping out of the darkness. The hunter's red eyes burned like molten metal, its armor glistening with cold alien design. It moved with silent predatory grace, and the officers, despite their training, stumbled back with fear gripping their bodies. Evan didn't run this time. He turned, holding Lyra tightly, shouting at the officers with a voice filled with urgency and something stronger than fear. "Help us, we have to get her out of here. That thing is hunting her." "Not us." But the officers hesitated, trapped between protocol and the impossible truth standing in front of them. The hunter lunged with a speed that tore the air apart. knocking two officers off their feet like they were toys. Rifles clattering across the pavement, Lyra screamed, her small body lighting up like a burst of blue fire. The glow erupted from her chest, spreading through her veins until her entire form shimmered like a living star. The hunter froze for a second, its sensors overwhelmed, and Evan felt her energy pulse against him like a heartbeat trying to break free. He didn't know what to do, but his instinct told him he had to shield her. He had to anchor her power before it consumed her. He held her tighter, whispering her name again and again. "Lyra, breathe, I'm here, just breathe." Her glow steadied, the light sinking back into her chest, softening but still alive, still burning. The hunter recovered and charged again, but this time the officers fired in panic, bullets sparking against its armor, slowing it for just a moment. "Move!" the lead officer shouted at Evan. "We'll cover you, go now." Evan didn't hesitate. He ran with Lyra in his arms as the officers created a wall of desperate fire behind him. Guiding him toward the patrol vehicle, Lyra cried softly, exhausted. Her glow fading into trembling flickers inside the vehicle, Evan held her close as they sped through the city streets, the sirens drowning out the echoes of the battle they left behind. Lyra lifted her head weakly, her voice fragile but clear enough to break his heart. "Human, protect me," she whispered. Evan brushed her glowing hair back gently, his voice shaking with emotion he couldn't hide anymore. "I'll protect you from everyone, even the world itself." But deep inside, he felt a cold truth settle in his chest. He wasn't just protecting her anymore. He was becoming part of something far larger, something that Earth was not ready for, something the aliens feared, something the hunters would never stop chasing. And as Lyra fell asleep against him, Evan realized the world had just taken her from the shadows into the hands of a government that didn't understand her, didn't trust her, and wasn't ready for the star hiding inside her small, fragile body. The sirens wailed through the night as the patrol vehicle raced toward the underground security facility, the sound cutting through the cold air like a warning the whole city should have heard. Evan held Lyra close on the back seat, her small glowing body trembling in his arms, her eyes half open as if fighting sleep and fear at the same time. Every streetlight they passed reflected in her shimmering skin, creating the strange illusion that she was fading in and out of existence. She whispered something weakly, her voice barely touching the air, but Evan could feel the meaning through her shaking fingers. She was scared, not of the humans around her, but of what she sensed above the clouds, something coming, something massive, something filled with hunger and cold silence. Inside the facility, armed guards surrounded them instantly, their weapons raised, their eyes locked on the small alien girl glowing in Evan's arms. The lead officer ordered everyone to stand down, but the fear in their faces was impossible to hide. Lyra curled herself against Evan, trying to become smaller, trying to disappear inside the one person she trusted. He whispered into her hair, "I'm right here, Lyra. I'm not leaving you." They led him into a steel-walled room lit by bright white panels, so clean and cold it seemed untouched by the world outside. Scientists and commanders stood behind glass, staring at Lyra like she was a miracle and a threat stitched into one small living shape. A woman in a white coat stepped closer, speaking gently even though her eyes were wide with wonder. "We're not here to hurt you," she said to Lyra. "We just need to understand what you are." Lyra pressed herself deeper into Evan's chest, shaking her head, her glow flickering like a dying star. Evan held her tighter, glaring at the glass where the officers watched. "She's a child. Stop treating her like a weapon." The woman paused, studying Lyra's trembling form. "Tell us what's coming," she said. "Your energy readings are rising every minute. We need to know why." Evan lowered his head, pressing his forehead gently against Lyra's, trying to calm the storm inside her. Her glowing fingers touched his neck, and a soft wave of warmth spread through him, carrying images, echoes, emotions that came like broken pieces of a dream. He saw a massive shadow stretching across the stars, an armada of dark ships moving in formation, their engines humming with a cold, unnatural rhythm. He felt Lyra's fear of them, the Varkuth, the empire that hunted her kind across galaxies, the race that wanted the star inside her chest. When the vision faded, Evan looked up with a breath that shook his whole body. "They're coming here," he said quietly. "They know she's on Earth." The room fell silent, the tension thick enough to strangle. The commanders exchanged looks of disbelief and dread. The scientists whispered among themselves, Lyra hid her face again, a soft cry escaping her. Earth isn't ready for something like this, a guard muttered under his breath, and even Evan felt the truth strike deep. Moments later, alarms blared through the facility, red lights flashing across the metal walls. The scientists jumped back, guards raised weapons, and a deep vibrating hum filled the air, so powerful it made the ground tremble under their feet. A voice crackled through the speakers. Unidentified vessels detected entering Earth's orbit. Lyra lifted her head slowly, her glowing eyes widening with a pain so deep it made Evan's heart twist. She placed her palm on his chest again, and he felt the star inside her pulse like a heartbeat ready to explode. She whispered through trembling lips, "They hear." The commanders rushed toward the control room, shouting orders, arrows of fear slicing through every word. Earth's defense systems activated, launching interceptors, raising shields, calling every available pilot. But Evan knew none of it would be enough. He had seen the strength of those ships through Lyra's memories, seen worlds fall under their dark wings. The woman in the white coat approached again, her voice softening. "Lyra, we need your help. We can't do this alone." Lyra looked up at Evan, her eyes swimming with fear and pain. Then she placed her small, glowing hand over his heart. The moment she touched him, the room filled with warm blue light as her energy poured through their connection. Evan gasped as something inside him shifted, like a hidden door opening deeper inside his mind. He felt her heart, her fear, her hope, and her trust in him merging with his own heartbeat. Lyra leaned into him, breathing softly, and whispered a word that felt like it belonged to both of them. Anchor. She needed him, not as a guardian now, but as the only human who could stabilize her power, the only being who could hold the star inside her from tearing her apart. The building shook as the first alien blast struck Earth's atmosphere. The lights flickered violently, dust falling from the ceiling. Lyra cried out and clutched Evan tighter, her glow brightening until her entire body shimmered like a living sunrise. Evan held her face gently, whispering into her trembling breath, "I'm with you, Lyra, whatever happens, I'm with you." And as the world above them trembled under the shadow of an alien armada, Lyra pressed her glowing forehead against his, letting her star connect to his heartbeat, letting her power find balance inside the only human she trusted. Together, they became something the hunters had never expected, a human and an alien child, linked by fear, trust, and a power older than war. And through that bond, humanity's first spark of resistance began to rise, trembling but burning, inside the girl who carried a star and the human who held her as if she was the universe itself. The first rays of sunlight broke over the horizon, casting a pale golden light across the city. Evan held Lyra in his arms as they stepped out of the military facility, her small glowing body trembling gently from exhaustion. The air smelled of smoke and ozone, the remnants of the battle above still hanging heavy, but for the first time since they had run through the dark streets, the world felt quiet, almost fragile. As if it were catching its breath, Lyra looked up at the sky, her eyes shimmering with soft blues and golds, reflecting the sun as if it were a mirror for her glowing heart. She whispered softly, "Home," a word that carried both hope and sorrow, and Evan understood that for her, Earth had become the only place that could hold her safe from the hunters, from the Varkuth, from everything that had hunted her across the stars. The streets were slowly filling with humans, soldiers and civilians alike, looking up at the sky in awe and fear. News broadcasts flashing across screens, reporting the strange alien ships and the mysterious energy that had pulsed from the city like a heartbeat of light. People whispered rumors of a child who had stopped an invasion, a girl whose power had altered the course of the night, and Evan realized that Lyra had become more than a child in hiding. She had become a symbol of something far larger than both of them. He set her down gently on the ground, letting her feet touch the cracked pavement. Her glowing veins pulsed softly, less frantic now, more peaceful. As she took her first shaky steps into the open light, Evan walked beside her, his hand on her small shoulder, his gaze protective and full of pride. Lyra looked up at him with a small, uncertain smile. "You stayed," she whispered, her voice barely audible, but heavy with emotion. "You didn't leave me." Evan knelt down, holding her face in his hands. "I promised," he said, his voice thick with everything he had felt, the fear, the exhaustion, the relief, and the love that had grown between them, "and I always will." The lead officer approached, walking slowly, giving space but still cautious. "We saw what you did," he said quietly, his voice a mixture of respect and awe. "No one could have stopped them but the two of you together." Lyra's glow brightened slightly as if acknowledging the words, yet she still pressed close to Evan, needing him more than anyone else, more than any human or soldier could be. He felt her heartbeat against his chest, the rhythm of a life that had survived impossible odds, and he realized that she had never been just a child, not a pet, but a living promise that the universe could change if someone believed in her. Above them, the alien fleet was retreating, their dark forms disappearing against the sun, a silent acknowledgement that Earth had survived, not through weapons or fire, but through trust, courage, and the bond between a human and an alien child. The city slowly began to stir, the hum of life returning, the tension of the night fading, leaving behind a quiet wonder, a fragile hope. Evan looked down at Lyra, brushing a strand of her glowing hair from her face. "Do you understand now?" he asked softly. "You're safe?" She nodded, her glowing eyes meeting his, a small tear sliding down her cheek. "With you," she whispered. "I'm home with you." For the first time, Evan let himself breathe fully, the weight of nights spent running and hiding, the terror and uncertainty, lifting off his shoulders, leaving only the quiet, radiant presence of the girl who had changed everything. He held her hand and they walked together through the streets, past the soldiers, past the civilians, past the broken remnants of the night's chaos, moving toward a future neither of them could fully imagine, but both now had a part in shaping. She stopped suddenly, looking up at the sky where the first clouds of morning drifted across the sun. "The stars," she said softly, almost in wonder. "I can see them again without fear." Evan smiled, feeling the truth of her words in the gentle pulse of her glowing skin. "And they'll always be there. But now you have a place to stand," he said. "A place to belong." Lyra took a deep breath, lifting her tiny face to his, the glow in her veins softening into calm, and whispered, "Thank you." Evan knelt beside her again, holding her hand tightly. "No," he said, his voice low but certain. "Thank you, Lyra, for trusting me, for surviving, for showing me what matters." And as the sun climbed higher, casting warmth over the city and the world beyond, they stood together, human and alien, protector and star child, witnessing the fragile dawn of a new era, one built not on fear, not on weapons, but on trust, courage, and the quiet power of a bond that could reach across worlds. Evan looked down at Lyra, and she looked up at him, and in that simple exchange, everything unspoken between them was understood. Everything that had been lost, everything that had been hunted, every shadow of fear and darkness was replaced by a single unwavering truth. Home was not where you were born. Home was where someone chose to protect you. And Lyra had found that home in him. As the first light of day spilled across the city, painting the world in soft gold, the alien girl and her human guardian walked forward together, ready to face whatever the universe would bring next. Their journey had ended, but their story had only just begun.